Want to be a guest on a future episode of Create, Build, and Manage Daily? Email us at interviews@biztv.com.
Cash flow is the key to success for any business. And my next guest is a leading expert in cash flow optimization. David Safir is the founder of David Safir International, and he joins us via Zoom tonight. David, welcome to the show.
It is wonderful to be here, Scott.
We appreciate your time. What do you find is the biggest reason so many business leaders struggle to manage cash flow?
The number one thing I see is business leaders equate their profit and loss with the amount of cash they think is going to be in the bank. And especially if they're using accrual-based accounting, accrual-based accounting has this funny way of accelerating profits and making things look better than they really are. And then people say, wait a minute, my accountant said I made so much money. Where is all my cash? And they're not the same thing.
Yeah, accrual accounting, I think most people know what that is, but accrual accounting where you're putting in, hey, we made this sale, but you may not have actually collected the money on it. And that's so true, David. I think if you've been in business long enough, you've made that mistake before. So how does your process help your clients?
Well, we've got a 6-part process. Number one, a lot of clients try to skimp on bookkeeping, and they've got to get their bookkeeping right. But then we create a model, and that maps out cash coming into the company and leaving the company. That's not part of a standard accounting practice, that unless you're doing specifically modeling, you'll never see this. And then once you do that, you're looking forward, not backwards, like accounting. And when you're looking forward, you can start to project how much cash you will have in the bank, not only at the end of this week, but next week or for months into the future. And then we go on and work with that. But that's the key thing, is the mind shift and starting to look for future results, not just looking backwards.
You know, and David, you said something that was very key there. Most of the accountants that you hire, and by the way, we love our accountants, could not run a business without our accountants, but they are looking at historical numbers. They're looking at the past. So when they present you numbers, there's nothing you can do about it. So what are some tips to shift our mindset, but also help the entire organization to shift its mindset to be forward thinking?
The number one thing I recommend is 2 ways to manage cash that are interrelated. Number one is build a cash reserve. And you can look forward to what's the goal for the cash reserve. So if we want to put $1,000 in a month, then in theory, we're ending up with $12,000 in a year, but we might use it. But the point is, you're looking forward to building reserve of expenses. The other one is set up a credit line, because the future will bring unexpected results. COVID is a huge example, but we also have minor examples all the time of unexpected expenses, and sometimes you just don't have the cash, and you might want to dip into a credit line instead of your cash reserves. And certainly the two combined is really powerful, and those are both forward-looking activities.
I want to put your website up there for those who are watching tonight. It is cashisclear.com. Great website if you're listening to the podcast version of the show. Cashisclear.com. David, when you mentioned putting a cash reserve, I know I've heard, for personal budgets, you mentioned $1,000, $1,000, $3,000. Is there a percentage you recommend for a business? Because obviously different sizes, different budget. Is there a percentage you recommend as far as you should have X percent in cash reserve?
I don't look at it as much in percentages as how many weeks or months can my business survive with the bare bone expenses. What are your actual critical expenses that you can't do without if your income was cut off tomorrow? Now, this is going to be different for every company, but certainly you want a week or 2 weeks, a month. Do you want 6 months worth of cash reserves? Now, this might seem far-fetched, but if you think about natural disasters, the medical disaster, which was COVID, personal issues, especially if it's a small business that's highly dependent upon the owner to bring in revenue, the more it's dependent upon external factors, the larger you want to get, and what are you comfortable with?
That makes sense. And I think when you mentioned COVID, that resonates with all of us. I think if it weren't for the PPP loans, when the government stepped in, a lot of small businesses certainly benefited from that. In a way, that was federal cash reserve that they brought to the table. Think about how many businesses probably wouldn't have made it had they not received that PPP loan. That's interesting, and that kind of draws on this whole idea of what we're experiencing today, which is a downturn in the economy. David, it's a debate whether we want to call it a recession or not, but certainly we could call it inflation, we can call supply chain. How much is managing your cash flow really help you navigate all of these trouble areas that we all go through in cycles?
It's huge, because once you put the model together, you can then adjust it for increases, increase in rent, plug it in, increase in employee costs, plug it in. And you adjust the model for today's circumstances. But let me tell you, what might be a surprise to a lot of people, it's not the declines that really kill companies, it's when they grow too fast. Because their revenue, most of the time, is coming in well after they have to invest in the business growth.
And that's where you get to that line of credit you talked about having so that you can borrow against future revenue that you know is coming in, right?
Right. And here's the thing that, it's so frustrating. If I say one thing, don't wait until you need the credit line. Banks hate to lend to people who need credit. They love lending or offering credit lines to companies and people who do not need credit. It doesn't make any sense, but that's the way banks work. So get it now. Don't wait.
There's a lot of things about the banking system that doesn't make sense. But David, a show for another day, right? I appreciate it. Great tips tonight. And if you want to learn, if you want to learn more about managing cash, listen, as you head into 2023, cash really is king. And David's got some great practical tips for you on how to make sure you have enough cash reserve to keep your business not only stable, but thriving and growing. CashIsClear.com is a website, CashIsClear.com. This is Create, Build, and Manage Daily.